Hi, I'm John Gagliano, Senior Director of Biopharm Catalyst.
Hello, I'm Sheff, known as Sheff Station, a 20-year vet in trading biotech stocks.
And this is Biotech Bulls and Breakthroughs. Biopharm Catalyst is not a registered investment advisory firm, and the views on this podcast are not intended to be financial advice. Guests on this podcast may hold the stocks discussed in personal or other investment accounts. This content is for informational purposes only and should not be considered investment advice. Always do your own research before making any investment decisions. If you find the information on this podcast useful and would like more Catalyst information, Biopharm Catalyst is your premier resource for Catalyst data for over 1,000 publicly traded biotech companies. We track clinical trial-based catalysts, everything from IND filings to drug data releases for phase 1, 2, and 3 trials to regulatory decisions. Our Catalyst calendars are updated as soon as the press release comes out, so you can be sure you have the most timely and accurate information to inform your biotech trading. All of our plans come with a 7-day free trial, and we frequently run discounts on our platform. So check out www.biopharmcatalyst.com to get started today. Sorry, I forgot to mention that today is Tuesday, October 28th, 2025. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, depending on when you're listening in and where you're listening in from. Welcome once again to another episode of Biotech Bulls and Breakthroughs. Again, we're always excited to have Sheff on the line with us for another episode this month to talk about what's been going on in the markets and what his thoughts are on some of the upcoming catalysts as we approach year end. And I know Sheff, we were just talking before about how this is, it's kind of crazy that we're already end of October. We've got about 2 months left in the year. And just, how time really flies. And it's certainly been an exciting year and an exciting couple months in biotech. And, I think that's going to, those tailwinds are hopefully going to continue into 2026, as we were kind of just discussing before hopping on.
Absolutely. And, the interesting thing with those is that, we've seen historically slow months, really do well. Like the second quarter did well, the third quarter did well. And as we're heading into November and seeing some of the tailwinds of these conferences, AACR is going to be happening here over the next week. And then you've got, into December, you've got ASH and you've got, the San Antonio Breast Cancer Conference. So we're shaping up to be a really good end of the year run for biotechs. And clearly this has been one of the better years, I think, that I've had trading, and I've really enjoyed. Even with the ups and downs, you realize that it hasn't been long-standing in terms of weighing the market.
Yeah, absolutely. And I know a lot of times, we jump right into discussing about any recent news, the markets, et cetera. But sometimes we don't, kind of reflect on some of the trades that have come to fruition and have worked, or in some cases maybe haven't worked. So, what's really been working for you lately in the last month, the last couple months, as far as any individual trades, or is there anything that, hasn't been working that, you're kind of trying to, that you're trying to pivot on, or just, want to share any insights on?
Absolutely. One that worked really well was, PepGen. That was a stock we talked around $1.30. It ended up going to $6. And over that time, what we're seeing in a lot of these plays is institutions are coming in and moving the needle on these stocks. I mean, we were waiting specifically for, some data that they were supposed to have, some mad sad data in terms of phase 1, but we ended up getting institutional buying, and it really spiked the price. So I think that bodes well, not just for that stock, but it bodes well for the market in general. We saw Ovid, which I was talking about at 50 to 53 cents. We saw that hit $2. And what spiked it to $2 is, again, we saw a big institutional surge where we saw 8R Capital Management, Perceptive, affinity advisors. We started seeing a lot of big biotech players starting to come into that. And it took it over a dollar and accelerated to $1.50, $1.60. And of course, we were waiting on phase one data for that as well, where they met their pharmacokinetic data, the dosing. They found the right dosing for this drug, and so it's in the neuro space. And so what I'm trying to do is really try to play the stocks where you're seeing institutional buying ahead of a big surge in institutional buying. So typically looking at the 13 Gs, finding out, how consistently it's trading over its 30, 60-day moving average, shows consistency in the purchasing of the stock as opposed to retail investors that can spike a stock on any particular day.
Mhm.
And especially with the small caps, like, these have worked really well. We saw IXHL, Icanex, in the August timeframe go from 20 cents to $1.60. And I think some of the plays I'm going to talk about today are going to continue to to move. Some of the ones that have been a challenge have been one that didn't move like I thought it would was oh, and I just lost the ticker on that. I forgot what the ticker was, and I don't have it pulled up here. It was a breast cancer um, uh, drug that was device that was waiting 510(k) approval. It's one that I had been looking at a long time, and when it got approved, it spiked 20 or 30 cents, but it didn't have the move that I thought it was going to have. And a lot of times, the reason being with those 510(k)s is because it's not like a PDUFA. There's not a specific date.
Yeah.
So oftentimes you can get stuck in
Yeah.
waiting, and you end up not selling, or you end up selling, and then the data comes out and you miss the spike. So there's a lot of patience required on those, and so I'm more inclined to um, stick with the ones that have specific catalyst date, like Eladon, which has November 6th data, and we've seen that move significantly, and kind of stay along those lines.
Absolutely. And, I think that's really important. And it's something that we've discussed on this podcast several times before. But I do think it's really, it's insightful as we're obviously trying to educate folks and, just try to provide as much education and information as we can on biotech trading is to, sometimes take a look at, hey, it's everyone likes to reflect upon the successes and how they made money, et cetera. But, what didn't work and what were the reasons. And we've definitely talked about that, the specific catalyst date. Again, that's why some of the conferences are really good, because you know when the data is going to be released, that you can even get it to the specific time that it's going to be released, when the presentation is going to take place, or when the abstract is going to be released. Obviously, PDUFA dates, as we know from the FDA. So all things we've talked about, but I think it's always important to reiterate that. So I appreciate that.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think the other thing is, one that I got into that has dropped since I got into it. Or I got into it about 205 is a stock that I'll talk about. But a lot of these PDUFA plays, sometimes there's never a specific time there to get into it. So sometimes you find yourself getting in early, and then those plays might pull back. Mist, for example, is pulled back to
Mhm.
$1.90. I was talking to that around 205. They have a December 13th PDUFA. They've already had a complete response. That timing is not where the market sees it getting into it now. So maybe at the time when I was talking about it, it was a little too early for the market. There's still a lot of other plays that traders are looking at right now. And I think as we move closer to those dates, which is another thing I'm seeing, as we move closer to the targeted dates, we're starting to see them move more. Eladon is a perfect example. That one, they have data on the 6th, but we've known about this November data since October, and it pretty much stayed in the $2 range until recently. So I think a lot of times traders are they're not buying as early as they have. They're waiting until it gets close to the date, because there has been so much activity within the XBI and the IBB that we're seeing, um, just a lot of movement in different stocks, and they can't be in so many stocks that they lose the leverage to buy the ones that they really need at certain point in time with the upcoming catalyst.
And in that particular instance, right, would if you, let's just say you did get in a little bit earlier and the stock pulled back, right? Will you stay in that position and sort of ride that out as it gets closer to the PDUFA, in the hope that it just kind of gets, that rallies, so to speak?
Absolutely. It's like even now, I've been additionally buying, MIST, Miss Therapeutics, to lower my cost average. So now, before it was 207, it's about $2 now, and the stock's at $1.90. So I'm still down in the stock, but I have every confidence that as we get closer, that people are going to see that stock and watch it, watch the appreciation, because the market, for what they're in, is really strong right now. And the stock that I was talking about, so the other stock that I was talking about that I'd been in for a long time, this 510K, was Ice Cure Medical. And Ice Cure was ICCM, and they were the ones that, 76 cents now. When we were talking about it, it was trading at, you know 85, 90 cents, and it spiked on approval to $1.30, and then it just pulled back significantly. So, a lot of the a lot of the movement happened a week or two prior to the actual, date. So I think people thought it was going to happen earlier, and then you saw a lot of people losing patience when it was at 160 and the news didn't come out, and then people were shedding. And a lot of people, including myself, said, "I'm going to wait because I'm expecting a bigger move."
Right.
That bigger move did not happen,
Mm.
and I think because there was so much, um, anticipation, and because people had been in that for so long. Remember, they had their FDA panel like last year in November timeframe, and so it almost took a year for it to get approved. So I think sometimes these plays, when there's not a specific catalyst or defined timeline, people lose, interest. And
Yeah.
so those are what I'm trying to focus on now, the ones that have near term catalysts where we know they're going to have some, dates that are going to really move the stock. So I think that helps
Yeah,
significantly.
absolutely. Anything, just kind of on like a macro level or just general news level? I mean, anything just within the markets that's been catching your attention lately? Any stories or any trends that you've been seeing?
Yeah, it's been interesting because we talk about, buying trends, but then it's also important to look at companies that, sell, and companies that are not only selling their own stocks or at the market, but institutions that could be selling ahead of data as well. I think we're seeing more and more that it's really playing into how a stock trades, what people are seeing, that institutions and mutual funds are doing ahead of that. And obviously, you know it's really important to look every day, and I try to. I'm not the best at it, but I'm getting better. And I specifically, they share, and looking at companies that I'm following, looking at the filings that come
Yeah.
out. And a filing, if you see an insider, resign prior to data coming out, a chief medical officer, oftentimes things like that can move the stock. And a lot of investors don't know. They'll say, wow, this stock had a great day. It was up 20%. And after hours, it's down 30%. And I can't find anything. Well, a lot of times you're looking for things related to maybe selling, but oftentimes too, it could be a personnel decision made where it's like, wow, if a CMO is coming off, the board or the company when there's a month left till key phase 2, phase 3 data, that's going to have a significant effect on the price. And I'm seeing that in terms of selling as well, and buying. Um, Typically it was, oh, this just people are selling shares within the company, or it's an employee stock sell, so that usually you'll see an S8, which is when it's an institution or a company plan where they're already predetermined cells where people can sell their shares. Well, sometimes that's not the case, and you'll see insiders that sell a large amounts over a shorter period of time. It's not like gradual, minimal sells, via an S8. So that can also cause concern.
Absolutely. And that's certainly all points well taken. I think just jumping back to what you mentioned about some of the insider selling and the positions. Obviously, we've talked about our at Biopharm Catalyst, our hedge fund report, which takes some of the 13F filings and it takes a look at what the top biotech hedge funds, what positions they have and which position and how their positions have changed quarter over quarter. We update that quarterly. So that's obviously more on the kind of the institutional buying and selling side, which is something I know you look at, Sheff, and we've discussed in the past, but also the actual insiders themselves, right? The CMOs, the executives at the pharma and the biotech companies. That's something that we also track, which is our insider selling report, which is also available at Biopharm Catalyst, and it's something that probably maybe we don't talk about or push enough, because it is sort of a pretty big indicator of what's going on. I mean, you are talking about the executives and the folks that are at the top of the chain within these companies. So what they're doing themselves can be, a leading indicator for what's really going on behind the scenes, and something that, I do like to draw attention to, because I don't know if enough people really use it and look at it, honestly.
I don't think they do, and I think it's really important. It's a really important tool because oftentimes you have to. It's all encompassing within the biopharm catalyst. You're looking at, specific, catalysts that are going to drive different events. But if you know what's happening outside of that, and it's all on one platform, it's a lot easier to access it, and it's a lot easier to take notes on it as well. I think just tracking that has become more and more important, especially when we're looking at smaller companies that are, they're growing, but they want more leverage in terms of potentially getting bought out by bigger companies. And to do that, they need cash. And so a lot of times you can see who's owning these stocks in ahead of a catalyst. And I think that's really important because investors have always say they want to go where the smart money
Yeah.
is, and the smart money is often found in the 13G filings. And people don't look for that, and I think that's one of the things that they need to look at. And this year more than ever, where we're seeing small caps, mid caps, large caps really appreciate. We're seeing a lot of money going back into pharma and biotech that we haven't seen in a long
Yeah,
time.
absolutely. Uh, that's great. I appreciate the insights there, Sheff. If you find the information that Sheff is presenting on this podcast useful and would like to gain more insights into his trading strategy for individual tickers, you can donate to this charity, the Northwest Association for Blind Athletes, and all individuals donating $300 or more get full access to his VIP private X account. Founded in 2007, the Northwest Association for Blind Athletes is a national leader dedicated to improving the quality of life for children, youth, and adults through participation in sports and physical activity in communities across Washington, Oregon, Idaho, and Montana. NWABA's programs focus on helping people who are blind build confidence, gain self-esteem, develop friendships, and reach their greatest potential. You can donate by clicking on the link at the bottom of our podcast page, www.biopharmcatalyst.com/podcast, or via the link in the YouTube video description. Let's jump over to some catalysts with the last couple months of the year coming up. What are you looking at? We can kind of walk through your watch list like we usually do and just get a sense for what which stocks you have your eye on.
Absolutely. So the one I like that is a small cap is it's ticker symbol RLYB, and it's Rally Bio. And Rally Bio is about 63 cents right now, but they've got some solid catalysts upcoming. They've got it's a rare stage clinical development company that works in severe and rare diseases. And they've got a C5 inhibitor. And so they've got a cohort 2 data coming out, which is basically ongoing phase 1 confirmatory data, pharmacokinetic and pharmacodynamic data. It's 64 cents, 25 million market cap. I see that company doing good things and appreciating into the fourth quarter. Obviously, we're in the fourth quarter. I believe they're going to have data around mid to end of November, but I like that it's phase 1. And as again, I always talk about phase 1 data because you're less likely to get burned by phase one data because there's no statistical significant endpoints that you're really trying to meet. You're really just trying to look at, what's the data with regards to multiple ascending dose, and then, whether it's tolerated or whether it's not. So Rally Bio, again, they're developing this RLYB 116. It's a subcutaneous administered complement C5 inhibitor in immune platelet transfusion refractoriness and then refractory antiphospholipid syndrome, or APS. So it's two complement driven disorders with limited treatment options. And, again, we're always trying to look for these small caps that have a significant potential to move. And so that's one that I own. RLYB, I really like it. The other one that we're going to have data here at the end of October is Imuron. Imuron is ticker symbol IMRN. They've pushed their data back twice, but this study they're doing for Travelon, which is for traveler's diarrhea, they sell this drug on Amazon.com in the U.S. They have 7 million in sales. They're expecting this data at the end of October. I expect the data to be positive. So that's one catalyst. The second catalyst is that they filed for an IND for a drug for C. difficile antibiotic. And so that IND was submitted on October 8th, and usually it takes 30 days for an IND to be accepted so they can go into clinical trials. So that I'm expecting that to get acceptance on November 8th based on the 30-day window. And so that's those are two solid catalysts. The stock, is in the, it's about $2.15 right now. Hasn't had a ton of movement, which bodes well for the fact that I think when they do, have this positive data, I see it spiking between 250 and 3, and I see it having a good move on good data. The other one that I like is PRLD. It's called Prelude Therapeutics, and so they're reporting they've got a SMARCA. It's called a SMARCA2 degrader program, and so they've got data, phase one data that they're going to be presenting at year end. They're reporting their first phase one interim data, safety, pharmacokinetic, pharmacodynamic, and then clinical activity data. And again, that ticker symbol on that is PRLD. I see that one moving toward the end of the year and having a good move, a good run. I don't own PRLD. I do own the prior ones I talked about. Rally Bio. I own Imuron. I'm looking at, because Prelude is a end of the year, I'm looking at getting into that around the end of November, beginning of December, hoping it doesn't run prior to that. But the 52-week range is 60 cents to $1.90. It's got a good share structure. They're averaging about 242,000 in volume, so it's a very low float, low outstanding share play. And they've got $77 million in cash. And so I like that the market cap is 85 million and they have 77 million in cash. So and they have no debt. So the fact that they're trading at cash pretty much is, their products are definitely not being taken, or their compounds into effect in terms of in investor speak. There's another company, Howell Therapeutics. They've got data in cutaneous melanoma and renal cell carcinoma. They've got phase 1B data for a drug. They've got WTX 124. That interim data readout is supposed to be in the fourth quarter. I'm expecting it in December because we have San Antonio breast cancer, but we also have ASH. So not necessarily San Antonio breast cancer, but more ASH because we're dealing with melanoma. And I think we're going to have some data around the solid tumors in early December as well. Even though ASH doesn't really deal with that, it's more hematology. But you still have data that typically comes out within oncology within December. So, but they have that data is supposed to read out in the fourth quarter. I'm not sure when. I don't think it'll be around a meeting. I think it'll just come out. But again, it's phase 1B study that I think it's going to, their earlier data that they've had has been positive. And so I think this 1B data is going to be positive as well. Company is right now, they're trading at, I believe in the 150 range. Again, it's another small cap company that I'm following that I really like. It's 162 right now. That's going to be at the end of the year. The another company, Celis Life Science Group, ticker symbol Sam Larry Sam. They've got data that's going to be coming out at the end of the year. Top line data expected by the end of the year at 80 events, and that company is going to be reporting data in AML, acute myelogenous leukemia, positioning their drug for a triplet combo with venetoclax and azacitidine, which is going to move into the first line setting for acute myeloid leukemia, which is significant. Oftentimes, these drugs they start out, in a third or second line setting. They prove themselves in those settings, and then they work themselves up. But with this specific drug for Celis, ticker symbol SLS, we're seeing them combining with other drugs that have proven to work effectively in acute myeloid leukemia. And so that obviously pushes them in the first line, which there's significantly more revenue for a small cap company when you're in a first line regimen versus a second or third line regimen where all the initial options have already been utilized and put on the table. So that data is going to be coming out year end. That's another stock that I don't own currently, but it's definitely on the radar to acquire and start to look at the end of the year. So I like that one. The other one I like is DWTX. And DWTX, they acquired global and royalty-free rights for the Serpens Pharma SP16 in a deal. It was 7.3% equity, and they're fully funded by the NCA. It's a phase 1B trial in peripheral neuropathy, CIPN. And they're going to have data for their drug, Halneuron, phase 2B data in December of 2025. So we don't have a specific date when it's going to be, but we know it's December data. I think that data will be positive. But again, if somebody wanted to play that move into the data, they could, knowing that the data was in September, and then they could peel back. If the data is positive, it's going to have a substantial move because there's only 2 million shares outstanding. There's about 1.5 million shares in the float. So it is definitely a low float play, and people like those. I mean, people like the low float plays because they move significantly. We saw low float play that I believe I talked about on the last call. It was Spruce, ticker symbol SPRB. You know, they had 600,000 shares in the float, about 1 million shares outstanding. Now, I was expecting them to have news in January. And so that's what I was telling people to play the stock for. So the fact that they came out with breakthrough designation news 3 weeks later and the stock moved from $9 to $260, I had no clue that they were going to have breakthrough designation. I expected that move when they had positive data in January, in the first quarter of 2026. So that stock obviously is pulled back from $260 because they're in a rare disease space. It's at 130, 135. It was up today. But a lot of times these small companies like Spruce, can make significant moves. So if Dogwood Therapeutics has data that's positive, and they're supposed to have this readout for the 50 patients and for Halneuron trial, then I see a potentially solid move. I don't know if it's going to move like that, but obviously with 2 million in the float or 2 million outstanding, 1.5 million in the float, it could really move. So I like that one. The other one I like is Ganex. Oh, and real quick, I do own a few thousand shares of Dogwood Therapeutics, and right now the market cap's at 14 million, and so I'm not sure if I'm going to play it through the data, but I know that right here in the $6 range, if it makes a move prior, we have all of November for that thing to start getting some traction and momentum into their data. So it might be risk on reward type play that people might want to look at. The other stock that I'm looking at, GANX. They have 90-day biomarker activity data from their cerebral spinal fluid in participants that they're currently enrolling, and they're expecting data in the fourth quarter. Actually, um, the data was supposed to be in the first quarter of 2026, but there was such fast enrollment
Hmm.
in this study that they're getting data in the fourth quarter instead. And so, they have data for their GTO2287 and Parkinson's disease, and they're using a biomarker to look at. GBA1, which is a biomarker that determines whether patients who have that mutation respond better to this drug in patients with Parkinson's disease. So they've raised, money in July. They raised about 10 million, and so it's a company that I'm watching. For the fourth quarter, I'm not sure when the data is going to come out. They just said fourth quarter, but it is one to keep on your radar and one that could have a significant move. Um, let's see. There's SNDX, Sam Nancy Delta X-ray, and they've got a PDUFA date. Actually, I'm thinking that did I put? They might have already had. Well, I'm going to move on from that one. I'm not sure on that
Yeah.
one.
Okay.
Yeah, I'll move on from that one. Ovid. Ovid's one I've talked about in the past. Ovid 329 had data that came out in September, but they've also got Ovid's a buck 45, a buck 50. A lot of smart money in Ovid. We saw, ADAR, and Perceptive, and a lot of big money coming into that stock in September. Well, they have Ovid 350. So Ovid 329 is what got all the attention in
Yeah.
September. Ovid 3 Ovid 350 is the company's first KCC2 direct activator. Um, and it's basically it's a franchise kind of pill, so they're going to use it in different disease states, but obviously it's in the neurospace. But they have PK and safety data at year end 2025, and so I think that data can really move the needle on the market cap of Ovid, which right now, as I mentioned, their stock closed at at about I think about a buck 50, $1.50 today. So I really like that one. And again, like we talked about, anytime we have smart money coming into the stocks like that, you really want to watch them closely. Riley lifted the price target 2 days ago. B Riley to $5 because of the strong OV329 data. But this is another franchise type medicine with OV350. So definitely one to watch for. And again, that's going to be year end. So probably the last few weeks in December, we could get some significant movement in December for that one. Let's see. One that's really, it's a small cap stock. It's one that I haven't talked about before, but it's called Processa, and it's ticker symbol Paul Charlie Sam Apple. This stock is 30
Hmm.
cents. And the thing about this stock is that they have, and the thing about the product they have is that they have this technology called NGC cap, and NGC cap is the ability to take medicines that prior had tolerability issues, say like capecitabine. Capecitabine works in the area of cancer. It's an oral therapy, but the problem is it causes neuropathy, and it causes skin burn. It causes some toxicities that if it was modified and they were able to take care of those toxicities, that it would sell a lot more in terms, and it would benefit a lot more patients. Well, This NGC cap is that Processa has developed is in phase 2, and it's supposed to ameliorate a lot of the toxicity seen with capecitabine. And it's being used in breast cancer, metastatic breast cancer. It's actively enrolling patients right now, and they're expecting to share initial data in the second half of 2025. So I've touched base with the spokesperson for the company, their IR, and they basically said they're not sure when they're going to release their data. It could be in December. I doubt it will be around San Antonio breast cancer because they would have said that they're going to be there.
Yeah.
But being that it's a small cap company, again, it's around 30 cents. You know, you know, following up with that in December is a key priority for them with the remaining patients needed for pre-planned interim analysis in the second half, and then they're going to have initial data in December. So, again, that's one to watch. These are oftentimes small caps that investors like to get a hold of. It's 30 cents right now. Um, what I what I will let people know is that's really important is that the company filed a DEF 14A, definitive 14A, and sometimes in the 14As they will say that they have an intention of doing a reverse split because sometimes their share price is so low that a lot of times investors and big institutions can't invest or they just need more
Yeah.
liquidity in their stock. So I asked them if they were going to do a reverse split. They're not sure if they're going to do the data first or if they're going to do a reverse split. But all that to say, at 30 cents, even if they did a reverse split, I think if the data shows that the drug works in metastatic breast cancer, they're going to have a winner for
Yeah.
sure. And it's going to compete with capecitabine. So I like that drug. I like that stock. Um, I have not started buying shares. I'm still trying to get clarification on data time point, but I haven't received any yet. And they definitely haven't put any out for shareholders to view. RVPH, Reviva, Biopharma, their next major catalyst for shares is completion of their meeting with the FDA, which is scheduled for the fourth quarter to discuss their NDA for brilaroxazine. Um, and management believes that all their clinical data is complete right now for an NDA, and so they're just working to meet with the FDA to determine when they can submit their data and then get a PDUFA date. And they're working in the neuro space, and it's about 40-45 cents right now, so it's a small cap company that is trying to develop a drug for Parkinson's. So, or excuse me, schizophrenia, not Parkinson's. That was the last one, schizophrenia. So they make for an attractive partner for any big pharma that's looking to, get involved because they have no debt. They have a good cash position, and their market cap is extremely low. So definitely one to keep on the radar. That's Robert, Victor, Paul, Harry. The other one, it's a larger cap company in terms of, but it's more of a mid cap. It's Resolute, and Resolute's a late stage bio. The ticker symbol is RZLT. So yeah, RZLT, late stage rare biotech company that's developing therapies for hyperinsulinism with a market cap of about 825 million and a float of about 70 million. They've got data in July, or excuse me, not July,
Mhm.
December. They have data in December, and it's one of the top picks by Guggenheim.
Oh, wow. Okay.
So, yeah, so Guggenheim has as a top pick, and they have this Sunrise phase 3 data in congenital hyperinsulinism that's fully enrolled 62 patients and a significant pediatric population under the age of 2. Baseline data that presented at Endo 2025, it demonstrated a high disease burden. And the study's primary endpoint is a reduction in hypoglycemia events with secondary endpoints covering time and target glucose range and safety. So they've guided for data in December, so we could see that start to move into that data. It's about $8.50. Again, it's a rare disease. So if it represents a pivotal moment for the company as it pursues the first ever approved therapy you know, um, for HI, hyperinsulinism. So that's another one. Mist, I talked about Mist earlier. They've had a CRL, a complete response. They had a resubmission. Um, and, they've already talked to the FDA and they've had a type A meeting and a response. And the company held this type A meeting with the FDA to clarify outstanding issues and to align on requirements for the CRL, which was all based on manufacturing. There was no concern, for the second one, there was no concerns with the product. It was more, what are we doing in terms of the manufacturing
Yeah.
facility and to make sure that all that was underway. So they've got PDUFA date of December 13th. And I'm really confident that they're going to get approved because they've had two
Yeah.
CRLs. And, it just the odds of meeting with the FDA and doing that are just pretty strong. Um, TVTX, TVTX, they have that's Travere Therapeutics. They've got a fourth quarter AdCom which should occur soon. I don't think they've publicly announced when the AdCom is going to be. What I'm anticipating is that the AdCom is going to be in the second or third week of November. The reason being is because historically, after an AdCom, the FDA needs anywhere from 6 to 8 weeks to prepare for a PDUFA date. They've already got the PDUFA date. The PDUFA date is January 13th. So if you're looking 6 to 8 weeks, for the FDA, you're looking at the second or third week in November. And I think once they announce an AdCom, it's going to spike the price. And then we'll have an AdCom in December. And then you'll have 6 weeks for the FDA to make their decision on January 13th. So, that's a PDUFA play that, you know, I might look at playing because I like the fact that there's going to be an AdCom date. They just have not announced it. And typically, a lot of these PDUFA plays run into the
Yeah.
AdCom dates and have nice movement. A similar one in December is ALDX, Aldera Therapeutics. They've submitted. They have a PDUFA for December 16th. They've resubmitted their NDA for Reprolaxip in dry eye disease. If you recall, the company submitted the NDA following the positive results from the second resubmission, the Chamber trial, which the company believes addressed concerns that were raised by the FDA in their complete response letter. So again, you have two PDUFA plays that have had two complete response letters, and they've had type A meetings with the FDA. So you have MIST on December 13th, and then you have ALDX on December 16th. So, people have said, "Hey, Chef, I know you like the data plays. I'd like to see, hear you talk more about PDUFA plays because I see the opportunity for those to run." Well, I completely agree with you, and I think MIST because it's a dollar, in change. $1.90 right now, and then ALDX, I believe, is in the $5 range. So both of those have the opportunity to really have some significant movement. And as I'm winding down here, I've got a few more. TCRX, that's a small cap play. They have updates from their Plexi T, solid tumor, and Aloha heme phase 1 clinical trials, which are anticipated at the end of the year. The stock's in the dollar range, the $1.40, $1.50 range. They're also on track to file an IND application this year. So if they file an application in November, then obviously you'll have acceptance in December. So that is going to be a key driver for the company, especially a small cap company that like this. So that's two catalysts for the end of the year on a company that has like a 40 or 50 million market cap.
Hmm.
And that's Tom, Charlie, Robert, X-Ray. And then the final PDUFA that I really like is Aquestive Therapeutics. This is in the new year. It's January 31st of 2026. But they announced that the FDA about a month ago that the FDA had determined that an advisory committee panel was not required for anaphylim, which is dibutepharin sublingual film that's being used in their product. So it's, they've got a PDUFA date in January, that drug that I'm talking about is in the allergy market. So it's definitely a big space. And, a lot of people see the fact that there's no AdCom from the FDA as significantly de-risked. Because typically, if the FDA wasn't sure of your compound or if it was a new compound they needed more clinical data and expert opinion on, they would have an AdCom. So that spiked the price initially, but it's pulled back to more meaningful levels of entry that people can get into. Um, and you know, a lot of these analysts continue to believe that management's executed well. They've de-risked this product both on the regulatory pathway and the balance sheet positioning ahead of their milestone. And there's a lot of reiteration that the T1A market should accommodate multiple no-needle epinephrine solutions alongside traditional auto-injectors for asthma. So it definitely opens up a new space. It's not a Me Too therapy. It's something that is added. It's being added into the area of asthma, and so right then those are some of the plays that I think are going to be strong moving forward. Um, and oh, I did want to talk about one other one, AEON, and AEON is a company that has um, they've they work in the Botox space,
Mm.
and so what they're trying to do is they have a drug called ABP 450, which if it's eventually approved as a biosimilar to AbbVie's big AbbVie's Botox, it'll automatically be approved to treat every indication that Botox is approved for, as well as any
Mm.
future indications that Botox might be approved to treat. So the CEO of this company came over from AbbVie, which of course is a huge pharmaceutical
Yeah.
company along the lines of Pfizer
Yeah.
and whatnot. And they're working to get their drug in position to get approved as a biosimilar. So they've already shown in a phase 2 study called the ELATE trial, where they tested Botox against placebo in 174 patients with upper limb essential tremors. The results showed that the trial met its primary endpoint, with Botox demonstrating a reduction in the tremor disability scale that was significantly greater than the placebo arm. So, they've already had data that's shown to be positive. They just need this to get approved as a biosimilar so they can compete with some of the big pharmas. And obviously, if that happens, they become an attractive buyout
Yeah,
target. So
absolutely.
it's yeah, so AEON. So that's the final one I got for you. But I'm really anticipating some significant moves in the fourth quarter with a lot of these stocks. So
Yeah, I mean, obviously
um,
a ton of plays coming up, as is a lot of times the case as we get closer to year end. So that's fantastic. And again, Chef, thanks so much for all of the insights and for for walking us through all that. It's very much appreciated. And that information was awesome. And clearly, as we get into beginning of the year, then things are going to get reset as we approach the J.P. Morgan conference, and we'll get kind of the tone set for 2026. But still a lot of exciting things to come in a short window between now and year end.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I would be remiss. I left out one more PRQR. So please, everyone, they've got first clinical readout on fourth quarter for their phase one AX0810. It's for cholestatic disease, but that's one that I own. So I wanted to make sure people knew that because I've talked about that last
Yeah,
time, PRQR. So
absolutely.
keep an eye on that.
I don't think anyone on the call is going to be upset about more ideas. So, um, anyway,
Good deal.
I really appreciate it, Chef. Thank you so much for joining again this month, and for everyone on the call, thank you so much for listening and for your support of both Chef and Biopharm Catalyst. As usual, as we always say, please leave us comments, like the videos, engage with us, let us know what you want to hear about more moving forward. And we will see you again next month for another episode of Biotech Bowls and Breakthroughs in November. So really appreciate everyone listening in and for the time. Thanks so much, guys.
Thank you. Take care, everyone. Bye
Bye.
now.